My daughter scrubbed me from her life for 7 years. She acted as if I had never taken a breath on this earth. At 56, I walked away from my home and rebuilt my entire existence from the ground up. I bought a boat, managed a marina, and cultivated a life she knew absolutely nothing about. Then my brother posted a photograph of my yacht on the internet. 23 days later, my phone rang, displaying the number I had dreaded for nearly a decade. "Mom, it's me. We need to talk." "It's urgent." I stared at the screen, paralyzed, wondering what scheme she had cooked up this time. "My name is Caldwell, and I am 64 years old. 7 years ago, my daughter told me I was worthless and demanded I leave my own life. But when my brother posted a picture of me on my boat last month, she came crawling back, not to apologize, but to demand money she convinced herself I owed her. Let me take you back to where this nightmare began. To the night I learned that shared blood doesn't guarantee family. And sometimes, the people who are supposed to love you the most are the ones who break you the cleanest. It was a Tuesday evening in the autumn of 2017. I was 56 years old, sitting at a kitchen table that had belonged to my late husband, David. This was his house, the home he had dreamed of filling with and chaotic Sunday dinners. Instead, it held 3 adults who could barely stand to breathe the same air. My daughter and her husband, Jason, had moved in with me 6 months earlier while they tried to launch their tech startup. They needed to save cash. They said it was just temporary. I told myself it was a chance to be close to her again, to repair a bond that had frayed after David died. The manila folder sat in my lap, my palms damp against the paper. Inside were documents from a real estate agent, an appraisal, market comparisons, the works. I had overheard them 2 nights prior, whispering about a house they were desperate to buy. They were $52,000 short on the down payment. I had a way to fix that. This house was appraised at $195,000. After paying off the remaining mortgage and the closing fees, I could give them exactly what they needed and still have enough left to rent a small apartment for myself. She was my daughter. This was what mothers did. Sat across from me, her laptop open, typing with aggressive force. Jason was beside her, scrolling endlessly through his phone. Neither had asked about my day. Neither of them ever did. I cleared my throat, the sound small in the tension of the room, looked up with the annoyed expression of someone interrupted during life-saving surgery. "I wanted to talk to you both about something," I started, my voice trembling slightly. "I know you've been looking at houses, and I know coming up with the down payment is challenging." I pulled out the folder and set it gently on the table between us. "I've been thinking. This house is too big for just me now. It's appraised at $195,000. After the mortgage and closing costs, I could give you $55,000 toward your down payment." The silence that followed wasn't the grateful kind. It was heavy and cold. Stared at the papers, then at me, then she laughed. It wasn't a warm sound, it was sharp and dismissive. "A whole 55,000, she repeated slowly, as if she were explaining arithmetic to a toddler. "From this dump." Jason leaned back in his chair, crossing his arms over his chest. "Mom, with all due respect, 55 grand is pocket change for the scale of what we're building. We're talking about real business here, not." He gestured vaguely at the modest kitchen, the dated oak cabinets, and the linoleum floor that David had always meant to replace but never got around to. "See, the house is worth more than you think," I said, feeling defensive. "The appraisal is right there in black and white. It's valid." "We need real capital," Jason interrupted, his voice flat. "Not whatever scraps you can scrape together from selling a house that should have been updated 20 years ago." I felt something cold settle deep in my chest, closed the folder without even looking at the numbers. She pushed it back across the table toward me. "Mom," she said. She said it the way you'd say the name of a dog that had just soiled the carpet. "Look at yourself. Really look. What do you actually contribute here? You make what? $17 an hour at that administrative job. That's barely enough to cover the grocery bill. You're taking up space in a house that is way too small for 3 adults. Jason needs a dedicated office, not a corner of the guest bedroom. This whole situation is, she paused, searching for the word that would hurt the most. It's a burden, she finished. You are a burden. Either move your junk into the garage and stay out of our way, or honestly, find somewhere else to fend for yourself. Stop dragging us down. The words hit like physical blows. I opened my mouth to respond, to defend myself, but nothing came out. Jason stood up, his chair scraping loudly against the floor. He reached out and pressed his hand against my shoulder. It wasn't a comforting gesture. It was dismissive, a push. "Come on," he said flatly, not even using mom anymore. "We have actual work to do." I stumbled back, my hip catching the edge of the counter. The folder slipped from my hands, and papers scattered across the floor like dead leaves. Swept her arm across the table in frustration, and my coffee mug went flying. It shattered beside my reading glasses, the ones David had given me for my last birthday before the heart attack took him. He had them specially made with thin silver frames because he said they made me look intelligent. I had worn them every day for 3 years. Now they lay in pieces on the kitchen floor. One lens was cracked straight through, the frame bent beyond repair. And Jason walked past me, stepping over the appraisal papers, heading toward the master bedroom. I heard their door close with a decisive click. A moment later, I heard laughter. They were laughing. I stood there for what felt like hours, though it was probably only minutes. Then I got down on my knees and started picking up the pieces, the shards of my coffee mug, the broken frames, the scattered papers that represented every hope I'd had of helping my daughter. My hands were shaking uncontrollably. The house David had loved felt like a tomb. I gathered the pieces carefully, putting the ruined glasses in my pocket. I had worn them to see my daughter clearly. How ironic that they broke the same night I finally did see her clearly. By the time I stood up, my knees creaking and my hands still trembling, I had made a decision. It settled over me with the weight of something final and true. I wouldn't be there when the sun came up. The house was dark when I loaded the truck at 4 in the morning. 30 years of managing a household had taught me to pack efficiently. One duffel bag held everything that mattered: work clothes, toiletries, and a framed photo of David on our wedding day. His wedding ring hung on a silver chain around my neck, cold against my chest. Everything else could stay. The furniture we had bought piece by piece, his collection of vinyl records, the garden tools I used to tend the roses, all of it belonged to a life I was walking away from. I left a note on the counter, weighed down with the sugar bowl. "Sold the house. You won't be burdened anymore." I didn't write "Love, Mom," because that felt like a lie. We had already stopped telling each other the truth. The truck started on the second try. In the mirror, the house was just a dark shape shrinking into the November cold. David's house, his childhood home, a place that had decided it didn't want me anymore. The sale happened fast. I had listed the property with an investor who specialized in quick cash deals. He offered $190,000, $5,000 below appraisal, but I took it. Speed mattered more than fairness. After paying off the remaining $80,000 mortgage and $15,000 in closing costs, the wire transfer came to exactly $95,000. It was more money than I had ever held at one time. It was also everything I had left in the world. Port Haven, Florida, emerged from the morning fog like a postcard. Spanish moss hung from the live oaks along the waterfront, and boats bobbed in the calm water, reflecting the pink and orange sunrise. The air smelled like salt, diesel, and low tide. I had chosen this place because my brother, Julian, had mentioned it once years ago. He said it was a good place for people who loved the water but couldn't afford the yacht club lifestyle yet. I found a weekly motel 2 blocks off the marina. It cost $290 a week, cash, no questions asked. The room had a sagging mattress, a hot plate that smelled of burning dust, and wallpaper peeling near the ceiling. It would do. Julian called on my 5th day. We had been doing these weekly calls for years, ever since David's funeral, when most people stopped checking in. But Julian kept asking if I was okay. He was my younger brother by 4 years, the only person from my old life I had kept in contact with after made her position clear. "Still breathing?" he asked, our usual opening. "Still breathing," I replied. There was a pause, then his voice changed. It became heavier. "Listen, I need to tell you something. I'm in trouble. A business deal went south real bad. I need $62,000 by tomorrow morning or I lose my boat. It's collateral on a loan I took for a charter expansion that fell through. You're the only person I trust enough to ask." I pulled my car over to the side of the road. I had been driving past the marina, heading back from a failed job inquiry. $62,000 out of $95,000. That would leave me with $33,000. $33,000 to start over in a town where I knew nobody and had no job. "You there?" "Yeah, I'm here." "I wouldn't ask if it wasn't desperate. You know that, but your family, you're all I've got left." His voice cracked on the last word. Julian never cried, not even at our mother's funeral. I pulled up my banking app and stared at the number, $95,000. My hands were shaking again. I thought about how she laughed when I offered her money from the house, how she called me a burden. And here was Julian actually asking, not demanding, not laughing, just asking his older sister for help the way family is supposed to. I sat there for 2 hours. I watched the boats come and go. I watched my future narrow down to a single choice. Finally, I opened the wire transfer screen. I entered Julian's routing number. I entered the amount, $62,000. My finger hovered over the confirm button. This was nearly everything. If he lost it, I would be broke in a town where I was a stranger. 56 years old with $33,000 and no backup plan, no safety net, no second chances. But he was family. He was the only person who stood by me when David died, the only one who hadn't walked away. "Family first," David used to say. I closed my eyes and pressed confirm. Transfer initiated. New balance, $33,000. The next morning, I walked to the marina docks at dawn. A man about my age was hosing down the deck of a fishing charter boat. I stopped at the edge of his dock. "You hearing?" I asked. He looked up, shielding his eyes from the sun. He studied me, a middle-aged woman in work boots and jeans. "You know boats." I had never worked a day on the water in my life, but I needed this job more than I needed honesty. "Yes." He watched me for 3 long seconds. Then he tossed the hose toward me. I caught it, water splashing my boots. "17 an hour, start now. Name's Ben." I nodded and started spraying the deck like I had been doing it my whole life. I had $33,000, a brother who had just taken nearly everything I had left, a job I had lied my way into, and if any of this fell apart, I had nowhere left to fall. The water kept running. I kept spraying, and I didn't let my hands shake. They say the first year after losing everything is the hardest. They aren't wrong. At 56, I learned what it meant to start over in a place where nobody knew my name. There were moments during that first year when mysterious help appeared. A cash envelope slipped under my door, a rent payment made by an anonymous church charity. I didn't question it. I was too desperate. Looking back, I should have known someone was watching over me. November bled into December, then January. The weekly motel became my entire world outside the marina. Thin walls let through every argument from the neighbors, and a shared ice machine rattled like a diesel engine at 2 in the morning. My window overlooked the parking lot and a neon vacancy sign that buzzed and flickered every night, casting a red glow on the floor. I worked sunrise to sunset at the docks. Ben didn't coddle me because I was a woman. When I tied a cleat hitch wrong, he untied it without a word and redid it in front of me, waiting for me to copy him. When I stacked crates unevenly and they tipped during a swell, he made me restack them 3 times until I understood that balance wasn't a suggestion. It was survival. My hands blistered, then calloused. My back ached in ways I didn't know were possible. I ate gas station sandwiches for dinner and calculated my money every night on old receipts. The $33,000 I had started with was draining. $1,200 a month for the motel, another $400 for food and the bus pass. By March, I was down to roughly $32,000. I did the math on a paper napkin one night and felt my stomach drop. At this rate, I'd be broke in roughly 2 years if I didn't find cheaper housing. April brought a break. I found an efficiency apartment for $900 a month. It was one room with a hot plate, a shared bathroom down the hall, and no air conditioning. When the Florida summer hit in June, the heat turned that room into an oven. I bought a rusted bicycle for $120 and started riding it to the marina to save on bus fare. I saved $500 a month by eating cheaper, ramen, canned soup, day-old bread from the discount rack. The money stopped bleeding out so fast. Ben noticed I was showing up earlier, staying later, asking fewer questions and making fewer mistakes. In August, he called me into his cramped office. "Doc's supervisor position is opening up," he said, not looking up from his paperwork. "$22 an hour, you want it." I stared at him. He finally met my eyes. "You've earned it." My paychecks jumped to nearly $3,000 take-home after taxes. For the first time since I left Oak Ridge, my savings account stabilized. By late August, I had about $35,000. I wasn't drowning anymore. I was treading water. October broke me. I was hauling a heavy crate of bait when my foot hit a wet patch of algae-slick wood. The world tilted. I went down hard, and my ankle rolled beneath me with a sound I will never forget, a wet pop, like a branch snapping underwater. X-rays, a wrap, crutches. It cost me nearly $800 I didn't want to spend. The doctor told me to stay off it for 3 weeks. No work meant no paycheck. I had no health insurance yet. Ben's plan didn't kick in until 6 months, and I was 2 weeks short. When rent came due, I had barely enough cash on hand because of the medical bills. A 5-day eviction notice slipped under my door by my landlord, Mrs. Gable. "Rent is overdue. Pay within 5 days or vacate." I sat on the floor, my throbbing ankle propped on a folded towel, staring at the notice in one hand and my phone in the other. I scrolled to the deleted contacts folder. His number was still there. 48 hours left before the system scrubbed it forever. My finger hovered over her name. I could call. I could beg. She would probably laugh, but maybe she would send something. My hand shook. Tears ran hot down my face. The first time I had let myself cry since the night I left Oak Ridge. I whispered to the empty room, to David's memory. "I won't give her that satisfaction. I won't let her know she beat me." I pressed delete permanently. I watched her number vanish, pixel by pixel. On the 4th day, I hobbled on crutches to Ben's office, ready to ask for a loan. I couldn't bring myself to call Julian. He had already trusted me with everything. I'd rather beg a stranger. But when I got back to my apartment that evening, there was an envelope under my door. No name, no return address. $900 in cash. Exactly my rent. The next morning, Pastor Frank from the small church 2 blocks over knocked on my door. "Someone made an anonymous donation to help neighbors in hardship, Ms. Caldwell. We heard you were hurt. Please accept this." I didn't ask questions, I took it. The church covered the next month's rent too, while my ankle healed. By December, I was back at work full-time. My ankle was weak and stiff in the mornings, but it held. My savings crept back up. I never found out who sent that envelope. Part of me didn't want to know. Spring came slow and warm. One evening in late April, I was sitting on the edge of the dock after my shift, watching pelicans dive for fish in the amber light. Ben appeared with 2 cold sodas, handed me one without a word, and sat down beside me. We didn't talk for 10 minutes. Then he said, "You've been doing good work, real good. Keep it up." That night, for the first time in 12 months, I fell asleep without the chest-tightening fear that I would wake up with nothing. I still didn't have much, but I had a name people knew at the marina. I had Ben's quiet respect. I had a weak ankle and $34,000 and a roof that didn't leak. And I had the knowledge that I had been on the edge of the void and chosen to step back instead of jump. That was enough for now. In my second year at Port Haven, I made a mistake that would have destroyed me if it had happened a year earlier. I bought a boat I couldn't afford to fix, lost $12,000 I had no right to lose, and learned more from that failure than from any success I'd ever had. By mid-July of that second year, I had been the dock supervisor for nearly a year. My paycheck was steady. For the first time since leaving Oak Ridge, I felt something dangerous: confidence. I started thinking about building something instead of just surviving. That's when I saw the boat. It was sitting in a dusty lot 3 blocks from the marina, surrounded by sun-bleached "for sale" signs. It was a 26-foot cabin cruiser with faded blue trim and a hand-painted sign. Price to move, $19,000. In my head, the math was simple. Buy it for 19. Fix it up for 3 or 4,000. Sell it for 29. Easy profit. The seller was a man in his 50s wearing a faded floral shirt and a smile that showed too many teeth. He pointed out what he called minor cosmetic issues while assuring me the bones were solid. Engine turns over, hull is sound, just needs some love, he promised. I asked if I could take it for a test run. He said the engine wasn't starting at the moment due to a fuel pump issue, an easy fix, but he would knock 500 off if I took it as is. That evening at the marina, I mentioned it to Ben. He stopped hosing the deck when I told him the price. "You hire a marine surveyor yet?" I hesitated. A surveyor would cost $450. That was money out of my pocket. "I've been working with boats for 2 years now. Ben, I can spot problems." Ben looked at me for a long moment, then he went back to hosing. "Your money," he said. I bought the boat the next day, paid $18,500 in cash. It was nearly half of what I had saved. 2 weeks later, I had the boat on blocks in the marina's dry storage area. I started the repairs. That's when everything fell apart. The engine didn't just need a fuel pump. The block was cracked, a spiderweb fracture I had missed in the dim light. When I pressed on the hull near the waterline, my thumb went through the gel coat into soft, rotted wood. Water had been seeping in for years. The electrical system was corroded so badly that half the wiring crumbled in my hands like dried pasta. I got repair quotes, $10,000 minimum. I had limited funds left. For 2 months I tried to fix it myself. I watched online videos on hull repair. I bought epoxy and fiberglass mats and marine-grade wire. I drilled in the wrong places. I used the wrong adhesive. I made everything worse. By October, I was sitting inside the hull, water dripping through a patch I had botched, $3,000 in wrong parts and failed attempts. I did the math. 18.5 purchase, 3,000 in parts. If I sold it now as scrap, maybe I could get 10,000. It was a massive loss. I sat down on the wet deck and put my head in my hands. David would be so disappointed in me, I whispered to nobody. I posted the ad the next day. Boat for sale as is, $12,000. A buyer showed up within a week. He offered 10. I countered with 11. He shrugged and pulled out a checkbook. I watched him hook it up to his truck and tow it down the marina road until it disappeared around the corner. Then I sat in my truck and stared at the check for $11,000. I had put in over 21, lost 10,000 in 4 months. Julian called that evening, still breathing. I told him about the boat, about the loss, about how stupid I had been. He was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, "Expensive lessons are still lessons. What did you learn?" I didn't have an answer yet. That night, I drove to the Port Haven Public Library. I checked out every book they had on marine mechanics, hull construction, engine diagnostics, and boat surveying. I filled a notebook with drawings and notes about everything I should have known before I signed that title. I stayed until closing. When I walked out, I had 9 books in a canvas bag and a determination harder than anything I'd felt since leaving Oak Ridge. I would never be fooled again. If I was going to survive in this world, I had to become an expert. Not someone who thought she knew enough, but someone who actually did. The moment that broke me wasn't signing the check or watching the buyer tow the boat away. It was sitting in that rotted hull with water dripping onto my boots, realizing I had lost $10,000 because I had been too proud to spend $400 on a surveyor. I thought about calling, imagined her laughing when she heard. I didn't call. Instead, I drove to the library. If failure was going to teach me something, I was going to be the best student it ever had. I thought I had left and Jason in Oak Ridge when I drove away 3 years ago. Turns out, you can't outrun people who are determined to pull you down, even from 800 miles away. What I didn't know yet was that this wouldn't be the last time they reached across those miles to hurt me, and next time they would aim lower. By late May of my 3rd year, I had been promoted to operations manager at the marina. Ben had recommended me when the previous manager retired. It paid $25 an hour and came with a small office containing a desk and a filing cabinet. Real responsibility. I was 58 years old and finally building something that felt solid. That's when Arthur Sterling walked into the marina looking for someone to manage his private dock. He owned a 42-foot yacht and a waterfront estate 3 miles up the coast. He needed fuel management, weekly cleaning, and maintenance scheduling. It was a 6-month contract worth $28,000. We talked for an hour. I showed him my notebook from the library, the one I had filled after the boat disaster, and explained hull integrity, engine diagnostics, and proper winterization. He was impressed. We shook hands. I signed the contract that afternoon. I hired 2 part-time workers the next day, Leo and Sophia, both in their early 20s, both looking for steady hours. $12 an hour, 20 hours a week each. They were good kids, eager to work. I bought supplies up front, about $1,200 from my own account. I figured I would recoup it from the first payment. For the first time since the boat mistake, I felt momentum. 4 weeks in, I showed up at Arthur's dock for the weekly inspection. The gate code didn't work. I tried it 3 times. Nothing. I called Arthur's number. Voicemail, full inbox. I checked my email on my phone, standing there in the parking lot. One new message from Arthur. No subject line. Contract terminated, effective immediately. No further services needed. Final payment for work completed will be mailed. That was it. No explanation, no phone call, no warning. Leo and Sophia arrived 10 minutes later. They saw my face. "What's wrong, Mrs. Caldwell?" Leo asked. I couldn't look at them. "I have to let you both go. I'm sorry." Ben suggested I call a lawyer friend who sometimes advised marina clients on contract disputes. Met me at a coffee shop that afternoon. He reviewed the contract. "Cancellation clause is legal," he said, pushing his glasses up his nose. "Arthur is within his rights, but the timing is suspicious. Let me make some calls." 2 days later, called me back. Found something. 3 days before Arthur canceled, someone called him. Anonymous tip. Claimed you had a history of negligence. Said you had been involved in lawsuits back in Virginia. Suggested hearing you was a massive liability. My stomach dropped. I've never been sued, that's a lie. "I know," said calmly. "I checked. But here's the interesting part. I got the phone records through a contact. The call came from a business line registered to Logistics Solutions in Oak Ridge, Virginia. Does that mean anything to you?" Logistics. That was Jason's company, my son-in-law's company, 800 miles away. Spread the phone records on my kitchen table that night. I stared at the company name, Jason's name. The pieces fell into place like a puzzle I didn't want to solve. They had been tracking me. Somehow, word had gotten out that Caldwell was managing docks in Port Haven. Maybe someone mentioned it online. Maybe a mutual contact from Oak Ridge had seen my name. However they found me, they had reached out to destroy what I was building. 3 years later, 800 miles away, and they were still trying to bury me. I wrote the final checks to Leo and Sophia that evening. $960 total. It nearly emptied my checking account. I handed them the checks and tried to explain without explaining. "The contract fell through," I told them. "It wasn't your fault. You both did great work." Leo nodded, trying to smile. It's okay, Mrs. Caldwell, we know you tried. Sophia's face was harder to read, disappointment but understanding. They left. I sat alone in the office after dark and called Julian. Still breathing? He asked. They found me, I said. And Jason, they called my client, lied about me, killed the contract. Silence. Then Julian's voice came through, steady and low. Then don't let them find you again. No social media. Work quietly. Build carefully. Let them think you aren't worth watching. That night I sat in my efficiency apartment with phone records spread on the tiny kitchen table. Jason's company name stared back at me. 3 years, 800 miles, and they were still reaching out to hurt me. I picked up my phone and opened Facebook, an account I barely used, maybe 3 posts in the last year. I deleted it. Then the rest of my online presence, every digital trace I could think of. If they wanted to track me, they would have to work harder, and I would make sure there was nothing to see. The moment that broke me wasn't the email from Arthur or the canceled contract. It was sitting across from Leo and Sophia, 2 kids who had counted on the work I promised, and telling them I couldn't keep my word. I had failed them because someone 800 miles away had poisoned a deal with lies. After that sabotage, I made myself invisible. No photos, no posts, no trace. And in that deliberate silence, something unexpected happened. I stopped just surviving and started actually building a life. Edward, sorry, Julian, kept hinting about business connections that could bring me opportunities. I always said no. I wanted to earn it myself. What I didn't know was that some of those opportunities had been quietly arranged all along. The promotion came in early 2020, 4 months after I deleted everything. Fleet Operations Manager, $58,000 a year. A real salary, not hourly anymore. Mr. the marina owner called me into his office, a small room that smelled like cigar smoke and old wood, and told me the marina had never run smoother. Revenue is up, complaints are down, and the charter crews actually respect you, he said. You've earned this. I moved to a better apartment the following week. 1 bedroom, full kitchen with a stove that had 4 working burners. $1,100 a month, which felt extravagant after the efficiency place, but I could afford it now. I bought used furniture from estate sales. A worn couch, a solid oak table, nothing fancy. I created small rituals, coffee on the balcony at sunset, where I could see the marina lights flickering on as the sky turned purple and orange over the Gulf. I started saving $1,400 a month. By the end of that year, I had $47,000 in my account, more than I had ever saved in my life. 2021 was steadier. I stopped thinking about and Jason every day. Some weeks I didn't think about them at all. The work absorbed me. I reorganized maintenance schedules, negotiated fuel contracts, and earned the respect of the charter crews who had been skeptical of a woman in charge at first. The old salts who had worked the Gulf for 40 years started nodding when I walked past. That meant something. In the spring, Mr. pulled me aside after a staff meeting. You've changed this place. Revenue is up 18% since you took over operations. I want you to know I've noticed. It was the first time since leaving Oak Ridge that someone had told me I was good at something that mattered. I smiled. A small one, but real. My savings hit $56,000 by April. That June, I turned 60. No card from, I hadn't expected one, but the absence still stung in a way I didn't want to admit. Julian sent a gift, a nice watch with an inscription on the back. Still breathing, Jay. I wore it every day after that. Ben showed up at the marina after my shift with a 6-pack of beer. He knew it was my birthday but didn't make a big thing of it. We drank on the dock, watching the sun sink into the water, saying maybe 10 words total. That was Ben. When he left, I went back to my apartment and sat on the floor, not on the couch, but the floor, with a grocery store cupcake and a single candle. I put Julian's watch on my wrist, leaned David's photo against the beer bottle, closed my eyes and made a wish. I wish I knew if I was doing this right. If you'd be proud of me, David. if any of this means anything. I blew out the candle, sat in the dark listening to the distant sounds of the marina, and let myself cry for 5 minutes. Then I stopped, wiped my face, and went to bed. That was how I spent my 60th birthday. Late the following winter, I walked the docks before my shift. It was a ritual I had built. Dawn walks to check the boats, watch the light change, and think. That morning, I saw a flyer pinned to the marina bulletin board. 42-foot motor, yacht salvage $62,000. The photo showed a neglected boat with faded paint and a name barely visible on the stern, Second Chance. I stared at that name for a long time. Something stirred in my chest. Not hope exactly, but interest. I took a photo with my phone and saved it to a folder I named Maybe. By the time I turned 61 the following spring, I had $56,000 in savings, a job I was genuinely good at, and a phone that rang exactly 3 times on my birthday. Julian, Ben, and an automated call about my car's extended warranty. It wasn't the life I had imagined at 56, but I had built it with my own hands, and no one could take it from me. At least that's what I thought. 3 months after I turned 61, my brother told me something I never expected. He wasn't the struggling boat mechanic I thought he was. He was worth $350 million, and that's $62,000 I had given him 5 years ago. He hadn't needed it to save his boat. He needed it to save me. Julian sent a text message in mid-January. Dinner Friday, my treat, Harbor View room. I showed up uncomfortable. I only owned work clothes and one decent blouse I'd bought at a thrift store 3 years ago. The restaurant was the kind of place where they folded your napkin if you went to the bathroom. I felt like an imposter. Julian was waiting. Suit, tie, polished shoes. He looked different. He ordered wine I couldn't pronounce and made small talk about the weather, the marina, and how business was. Then he set down his glass. I need to tell you something. I'm not who you think I am. He slid his phone across the table. Articles, headlines. CEO Julian Caldwell of Caldwell Shipping Industries announces fleet expansion. Photos of my brother at a podium wearing a suit that probably cost more than my monthly rent. I stared, looked up at him, then back at the phone. I don't understand. Julian's voice was steady. I'm the CEO of a national freight shipping company. We own a cargo fleet, warehouses in 8 states. Net worth is around $350 million. I've been not exactly honest about my circumstances. My confusion turned to anger fast. You lied to me for 5 years. Julian didn't flinch. I needed you to see what you could build on your own. Back in 2017, when you left Oak Ridge with $95,000 and I asked you for $62,000, I didn't actually need it. I wasn't rich then like I am now, but I wasn't drowning. But you gave it to me in hours. No questions, no hesitation. Meanwhile, wouldn't even let you finish your sentence when you offered her money. That moment told me everything I needed to know about who you both were. I was still processing. Julian kept going. That $62,000 you gave me, I put it into a separate high-yield account. I never touched it, and once I had resources, I made a choice. If you could sacrifice for me when I had nothing, I would make sure you had real opportunities when I had everything. Every lucky break since then, Ben hearing you, the rent help from the church, even Arthur's contract before Jason poisoned it, I arranged those, not the sabotage. That was real. But the opportunities, I created them. I didn't give you success. I just made sure the doors were unlocked when you were ready to walk through them. My hands were shaking. You watched me struggle. Julian's eyes were wet. I watched you survive, then thrive. If I had just handed you money, you would have felt like it was charity. You needed to earn it to prove to yourself that you could stand on your own. I didn't test you, sister. I just repaid a debt. I went through every emotion at that table. Anger. You stood by while I nearly lost everything. Gratitude. You kept me from being homeless. Confusion. Why not just help openly? Julian leaned forward. Because you needed to know you did this. that your success came from your own hands, your own choices, your own character. Proved who she was when she had everything and chose cruelty. You proved who you are when you had almost nothing and chose generosity. We both stood, met across the table, and hugged, both of us crying. Other diners stared. We didn't care. My brother, my actual brother, had been watching over me for 5 years. Not controlling, not rescuing, just making sure the door was open when I was ready to walk through. A week later, Mr. found me at the marina. I got a call from Julian Caldwell, spoke very highly of you. I'm 72. My wife wants me to retire. I'm thinking about selling the marina. You interested? I blinked. Sir, I don't have that kind of money. Smiled. Price is $520,000. You'd need $170,000 down. Bank loan for the rest. Julian said he'd co-sign your loan and he'll cover the down payment if you need it. That night Julian called. About that $62,000 you loaned me back in 2017, here's your repayment. $62,000 principal plus $188,000 on top. Call it a partner investment for the woman who saved me when it mattered. Buy that marina. You've earned this. I signed the papers on the last Tuesday of April. Pushed the keys across his desk. Real keys to the marina gate, the office, the fuel station, everything. Congratulations, Ms. Caldwell. You're a business owner. I walked out onto the docks. I had scrubbed them as a maintenance worker 6 years ago. Same docks, but mine now. Ben found me 2 hours later, still standing there clutching the keys. You okay, boss? I wasn't sure, but I knew one thing: I had built something that couldn't be taken away. Julian had given me $250,000, the 62 return plus interest. Had sold me the marina for $520. I owned equity, real ownership, not charity, not luck. I had earned the chance. Julian had just made sure the door was unlocked. And now at 61 I owned something solid, something mine, something couldn't touch. Or so I thought. The name painted on the yacht's stern felt almost cruel the first time I saw it. Second chance. At that point in my life I didn't believe in second chances. Not for families, not for dreams, and certainly not for women who had already been written off by the people they birthed. I believed in survival. I believed in endurance. I believed in getting through the day without collapsing under the weight of what I had lost. I didn't buy her to forgive my daughter. I bought her to forgive myself. For 30 years I had postponed my own dreams in the name of responsibility. Every decision I made was framed around what was practical, what was expected, and what kept the family stable. I told myself that sacrifice was the price of love, that dreams could wait, and that there would always be time later. There wasn't. I found the yacht in May, tucked into the far corner of a salvage yard where abandoned boats waited to be stripped for parts or quietly forgotten. She was 42 feet long, her hull dulled to a lifeless gray, her name barely visible beneath layers of old, chipping paint. Moss crept along the waterline like a green infection. The teak rails were cracked and dry, thirsty for oil. She looked tired and used up. So did I. The broker walked me through the yard with practiced indifference. She's been sitting here a while, he said, checking his watch. Owner ran out of money halfway through a refit. Engines are shot, interiors are gutted. She's not pretty, Ms. Caldwell. I ran my hand along the hull anyway. The fiberglass felt solid beneath the neglect. How much? I asked. He named a number that was higher than I could afford comfortably but lower than she was arguably worth. I told him what I had. Cash, no financing, no contingencies, no inspection beyond what my eyes and hands could tell me. He studied me for a long moment, gauging my seriousness. Then he nodded. Deal. I signed the papers that afternoon. Ben met me at the yard the next day. He walked the deck slowly, his knuckles rapping against the hull, his eyes narrowing as he peered into the engine compartment. He didn't sugarcoat anything. You've got 4 months of hard work here, he said, wiping grease from his finger. Maybe 5 if you want her done right. Then I better get started, I replied, rolling up my sleeves. Ben grinned, the lines around his eyes deepening. I'll bring the beer on Sundays. The restoration became a ritual. Every evening after the marina office closed, I drove to the dry dock and worked until my arms ached and my hands burned from the chemicals. Sanding became a form of meditation. The hull had been painted 7 times, each layer hiding the one beneath. I stripped her down to bare fiberglass inch by inch, breathing in dust and memory. Ben showed up most weekends. Sometimes Julian called to check in. We didn't talk much while we worked. We didn't need to. Silence carried its own kind of honesty. The engine nearly broke me. It cost more than I had planned, and the replacement required rewiring half the systems on board. The interior followed: electrical, plumbing, cabinetry, upholstery. Every fix revealed another problem waiting underneath, like peeling back layers of an onion. I could have stopped. I could have sold her at a loss and walked away. No one would have blamed me. But quitting would have meant admitting that some things really were beyond saving, and I wasn't ready to concede that. Julian called one Sunday in July. "Let me help with the upholstery costs," he said. I didn't argue. He had earned the right to be part of this. By late August, she was whole again. White hull, navy trim, new canvas snapping in the breeze. The name was repainted in clean, sharp letters: Second Chance. September brought the launch. Julian flew in from Charleston. Ben brought a bottle of champagne. A handful of dock workers gathered at the pier to watch her slide back into the water. Julian stood at the bow, bottle in hand, and struck it against the hull. The crack echoed across the harbor. "To second chances," he said, his voice thick with emotion. I didn't correct him. That night I slept aboard for the first time. The cabin smelled of varnish and fresh wood. I lay in the berth, listening to the water lap against the hull, feeling something I hadn't felt in decades. Not relief, not happiness, but permission. "It's okay now," I whispered into the dark. "I'm finally doing it." October brought Leo to my office. He was one of the younger dock workers I had hired back when I took over, mid-30s, reliable, rarely late. He knocked twice and stood in the doorway like a man bracing for impact. "I need to ask you something, Mrs. Caldwell," he said, his voice tight. I waved him in. "Sit down, Leo." He sat stiffly, his hands clenched in his lap. "My daughter, Maya, she's 7. She needs heart surgery. The insurance, the claim, said it was experimental or some nonsense. I've been saving everything I can, but I'm short $21,000. I didn't hesitate. "I'll take care of it." Leo froze. "I can't. I wasn't asking you to pay it. I just need an advance on my wages or maybe a loan." "I'm telling you," I said firmly. "Give me the hospital's billing number. I'll wire it today." I paid that afternoon. When Leo found out, he came back to the office and cried. I stood, walked around the desk, and hugged him, awkward but certain. "She'll be fine," I said. "That's all that matters." By November, I formalized something that had been growing quietly in my mind. With Julian's guidance, I established the Port Haven Maritime Scholarship Fund. $30,000 a year, split between 3 students pursuing vocational paths in maritime trades. The first recipients were Tyler, Jessica, and kids with talent and discipline but no financial runway. I met them at the marina in December. Tyler shook my hand like it was a contract. "I won't waste this, ma'am," he said. "I know," I replied. I also began donating to the local food bank and funded repairs at the family shelter on Shoreline Road. Quiet contributions. No press, no announcements. It wasn't about charity. It was about proof that I could build something useful instead of just surviving. Julian visited again in late November. We sat on the deck of Second Chance, coffee in hand, watching gulls circle above the water. "You've changed," he said. I had to. "No," he replied, shaking his head. "You chose to." He pulled out his phone. "Let me take a picture for the marina website. You look. Content." I stood at the bow, the wind tugging at my linen shirt. Julian framed the shot carefully. "Perfect," he said. I didn't know then how far that image would travel. I didn't know it would leave the marina. I didn't know that 23 days later, I would receive a call from a number I hadn't heard from in 5 years. And I definitely didn't know that everything I had built was about to be tested in ways I couldn't yet imagine. Julian's social media post took 6 hours to reach 1,200 likes. By hour 7, it had reached Oak Ridge. By hour 8, my phone was vibrating with messages from numbers I thought I would never see again. And just like that, the 7 years of peace I had built began to crack. Monday morning, Julian called at 8:15. Check your phone. I posted about the marina's anniversary on social media. I hadn't opened my accounts in months, had set them up for business purposes, but I never used them. I opened the app. There it was, a photo of Julian and me standing on the dock, the name Second Chance clear in the background, the office sign visible behind us, Caldwell Maritime Services, Caldwell owner. The caption read, "Proud to celebrate 1 year with my sister and the incredible journey she's taken to own Port Haven Marina. A story of resilience, second chances, and the power of starting over." The likes were climbing fast. Julian had 18,000 followers, mostly shipping executives, logistics managers, and fleet operators. The comments poured in. Congratulations. Inspiring. Legend. My stomach twisted. Julian, you tagged the marina's business page in my profile. Yeah, that's standard for engagement. I've been invisible for 7 years, I interrupted. You just put a spotlight on me. There was a pause. I'm sorry, I didn't think. I just wanted to brag on you. It's done, I said, rubbing my temples. It's out there now. By hour 8, my phone, my old number, the one I had never changed, started lighting up. Unknown number. Mom, saw Uncle Julian's post. You're still alive. We need to talk. I stared at the screen. My hands shook. I didn't reply. Second message. Jason and I have been so worried. 7 years is a long time. Call me. A third came, then a fourth. I muted the phone, left the office, and walked to the end of the dock. I sat at the edge, legs hanging over the water. Ben found me there 20 minutes later. You okay, boss? They found me. Your family. I nodded. You want me to run them off? I smiled faintly. Can't run forever, Ben. They'll come. Tuesday, I checked my phone. 47 missed calls, 23 texts, 12 voicemails. I didn't listen to any of them. Called. Got something interesting. Logistics, Jason's company, has been negotiating with Caldwell Maritime for 8 months. Annual logistics contract worth $450,000. His assistant emailed this morning asking to move the final meeting up to this week if possible. He still doesn't know you're the owner. I processed that. How do you know he doesn't know? Because his emails to me are professional but impersonal. He calls me Mr. Knott's lawyer. He's blind. So, he's been begging me for a contract for 8 months, and he doesn't know it's me. Every proposal, every revision, you've read all of them. I leaned back in my chair. The irony was almost unbearable. Friday forwarded an email. Jason's assistant had booked flights, 2 tickets, Jason and arriving Thursday at 2:00 p.m. I sat alone in my dark apartment that night and pulled up an old voice recording from 7 years ago, saved on the device backed up in the cloud. I pressed play. His voice, Mom, look at yourself. All you do is take up space. Jason's voice, get out of the way. I stopped it, played it again, memorized every syllable. I turned to David's photo on the nightstand. Is this revenge or justice? I whispered. I don't even know anymore, but they're coming, and I need to remember why I can't fall apart. Wednesday evening, I stood on the deck of Second Chance and watched the sunset paint the Gulf in red and orange. Ben appeared with 2 beers, handed me one without a word. Heard they're flying in tomorrow, he said finally. Small towns, even marina communities, spread news fast. I nodded. You going to be okay? I thought about it. I don't know, but I won't let them see me weak. Not again. He clinked his bottle against mine. Good, because you aren't that woman anymore. Jason walked into my office at exactly 9:00 a.m. Leather briefcase, polished pitch rehearsed. He made it 3 steps before he saw the nameplate on my desk. The briefcase hit the floor. The business meeting was only the opening round. The real confrontation, the one that would decide everything, would happen on my boat 12 hours later. It was 8:58 when I sat at my desk reviewing papers I didn't need to review. I heard his voice at the front desk. Jason, 900 with Mr. Caldwell, or Ms. Caldwell. My chest tightened. I steadied my breathing. The door opened. He walked in with the kind of confidence that comes from years of closing deals, pressed suit, polished shoes, briefcase swinging at his side. He extended his hand. Ms. Caldwell, it's an honor to finally meet in per. He stopped mid-sentence. His eyes locked on the nameplate, Caldwell owner. I stayed seated, didn't offer my hand. Hello, Jason, sit down. The briefcase slipped from his fingers and hit the floor with a dull thud. Sitting quietly in the corner chair, cleared his throat. Please, mister, have a seat. Jason lowered himself into the chair like a man sitting in a courtroom dock. His face had gone pale. You're the owner, this whole time. I leaned back in my chair, fingers steepled. I've known who you were since your first email 8 months ago, April 18th. Subject line, Logistics Partnership Proposal Solutions. Would you like me to quote it back to you? I turned my laptop toward him. The screen showed 47 emails between firm and Jason's company. Every proposal, every revision, every desperate follow-up when he dropped his price from $480 to $450 last month. I read every one, I said. Handled the replies, but every decision, every delay, every request for additional information. That was me. Jason's mouth opened, but no sound came out. Why would you? This is business. We can put the past. Put aside what, exactly? I opened the drawer of my desk and pulled out my phone. I set it face up on the desk between us and pressed play. The recording filled the room. His voice, sharp and bitter. You make what? $17 an hour. You're a burden. Find somewhere else to fend for yourself. Jason's voice, cold and dismissive. Come on, we have actual work to do. The sound of me stumbling, a chair scraping. Jason's face drained of color. I let the recording play for another 10 seconds, then stopped it. That was 7 years ago, I said. November 2017. I've listened to it every year on the anniversary. It keeps me motivated. Jason's hands trembled. We were young, under pressure, the business was. I held up a hand. The answer is no. He blinked, no. The contract goes to Gulf Horizon Logistics, a smaller company, veteran-owned. They're charging me $380 a year. I'm paying less than your proposal and getting people who actually appreciate the opportunity. Jason leaned forward, desperation bleeding into his voice. Please, without this contract we'll lose everything. The company, the house. Good, I said. You deserve to know what that feels like. I stood, the meeting was over. We'll show you out. Jason tried one last time. Is outside, she wants to talk to you. Tell my daughter she can meet me tomorrow morning, 8:00 a.m. on my boat. She knows which one. The name is painted right on the stern. Stepped onto my boat at 8:00 a.m. the next morning. I didn't invite her. I didn't need to. She saw the name Second Chance painted on the stern and assumed it was a message for her. She had no idea what the name really meant. I had been standing on the deck since 7:45, coffee in hand. I heard footsteps on the dock, slow, hesitant, appeared at the edge of the pier. No Jason, she was alone. Her eyes were red, her face drawn. She stopped at the gangway, hands gripping the strap of her designer purse. Mom, can I come aboard? I didn't move. You're already on my boat. She climbed up carefully. Her gaze swept the polished deck, the gleaming rails, the name painted in bold white letters. She tried to smile through the tears starting to well up. "You named it Second Chance," she said, her voice breaking. "That has to mean something, right, that you believe in, second chances." I set my coffee down and turned to face her fully. The sun was behind me now, and I could see every detail of her face, the lines of exhaustion, the tremble in her jaw. "I named this boat Second Chance because at 56 years old, I got a second chance to live the dream I gave up when I was young, when I gave up the ocean for a family that made it clear I had no value. This boat is my second chance to choose myself." Her face collapsed. The small hope she had been clinging to, the idea that the name was some kind of olive branch, shattered visibly. "Mom, No," I said quietly. "You don't get to finish that sentence yet." She stood frozen, then her desperation surfaced. "We were wrong, I know that, but we're family. We owe $310,000 in business debt. Without that contract, we lose the house. I'm begging you." I let the silence sit between us for a long moment. The water lapped softly against the hull. "How does it feel," I asked finally, "to beg someone you threw away?" She was crying now, really crying, shoulders shaking, hands pressed to her face. "I'll do anything, please just help us." "Anything?" I repeated. "Except value me 7 years ago when it actually mattered." I turned and walked to the stairs leading below deck. When I came back up, I was carrying an old folder, the yellowed paper weathering at the edges. I placed it on the table between us. "What is that?" she whispered. "The appraisal for the house, your father's house, dated November 2017. I opened the folder slowly. "Appraised value, $195,000. I was going to sell it," I said. "Give you $55,000 for your business. I had the papers ready, but you called it pocket change and told me to disappear." Stared at the documents like they were written in a foreign language. Her hands trembled as she reached out and touched the paper. "Mom, you were going to help." "Yes," I said. "It would have been your safety net right now, but you mocked it, and now you want a piece of the same 55,000. "No," she tried one last card. "What about Dad? Family was everything to him. He'd want you to help us." The anger I had been holding back surged. "Don't you dare use David's memory to manipulate me. Your father would be ashamed of what you've become. He'd be heartbroken to know you treated me like garbage the second you didn't need me anymore." Sobbed openly now. "Please, Mom. The contract is gone. You and Jason need to leave." She stood slowly, tears streaming down her face. "You're going to let us lose everything?" "Yes," I said. "Just like you let me walk away with nothing 7 years ago. At least I'm giving you a warning." She stepped off the boat and walked slowly down the dock. A part of me, the part that still remembered her at 7 years old, wanted to call her back. But I didn't. I went below deck, poured a glass of whiskey at 9:00 in the morning, and waited for whatever they would do next. They flew back to Oak Ridge on Saturday. By Monday morning, social media post had 8,000 shares. By Wednesday, the local paper ran a story with my name in the headline. The post featured a photo of her at 7, sitting on my shoulders at the beach. The caption was calculated. "Heartbroken to share that my mother, now a wealthy marina owner, has refused to help her daughter through a family crisis. When I reached out after 7 years, hoping to reconcile, she turned me away. Money has changed her into someone I don't recognize. Family first, heartbroken." The comment section was toxic. "Rich people forget where they came from. She's a monster." Business took a hit. A yacht rental client canceled, citing family values. Ran the numbers. 5,000 in lost revenue in a week. I sat at my desk that evening staring at the empty harbor. Ben walked in. "You want to fight back? Tell the truth." "Not yet," I said. Early December brought the news I had been expecting. Walked into my office with a stack of papers. Logistics Solutions filed for Chapter 7 bankruptcy this morning. They're liquidating assets. Auction is scheduled for December 20th. I stared at the papers. "You could buy the company," said carefully. "Estimated liquidation value is 90,000. You'd own the thing that destroyed them." I thought about it for 3 days. I looked at David's photo. "Compassion is what lets you sleep at night," he used to say. I bought my daughter's company for $98,000 on a cold December morning. Not because I wanted to own it, but because I wanted to give her one last chance to prove she was worth saving. December 28th, I sat at my kitchen table's number on my screen. I dialed. "Hello," her voice was brittle. "It's Mom." Silence. "I know, what do you want?" "The company is mine now, finalized last week. You have 48 hours to clear your personal belongings, or," I paused, "you can stay." "What?" "I'm restructuring it as Caldwell Logistics. I have 2 entry-level positions. Junior coordinator, 40,000 a year. Operations assistant, 40,000. No benefits for the first 6 months. 90-day probation. You report to managers, not to me. You prove your value or you're out." Jason's voice erupted in the background. "That's insulting." "Being shoved into a wall and called a burden in my own home was insulting too," I said evenly. "But I survived. You will too if you choose to." Was crying again. Why offer this?" "Because your father loved you," I said, my voice thickening. "And I have to believe that somewhere underneath all the cruelty, there's still the person he raised. But I can't forgive you, not yet. Maybe never. This isn't about you. It's about me being able to live with myself." They accepted. 6 months later, I drove past the office late one evening. Through the window, I saw at her desk, head down over paperwork. Jason was at the loading dock, scanning inventory. They weren't doing it to impress me. They didn't know I was there. They were doing it because that's the price you pay when you rebuild from zero. I sat in my truck watching. I didn't feel triumph. I felt exhausted. Julian found me on the deck of Second Chance that Sunday. He brought pastries and coffee. We sat in silence for a long time. "You're softer than you think, sister," he said quietly. I scoffed. "Soft, I feel like granite." "If David could see all this," Julian said, looking at the water, "what you've done, what they're doing, would he say you did right?" I opened my mouth to answer, but nothing came out. That silence was heavier than any accusation. "I don't know," I admitted. "That's the part that keeps me awake." "You remember the $62,000 test I put you through?" Julian asked. "You passed it because you gave without expecting anything back. That was grace. Maybe that's what you're doing now. It doesn't mean they've earned forgiveness. It means you're still the woman David married." Tears welled in my eyes. "I miss him so much." "I know," Julian said, squeezing my shoulder. "But you're doing it, you're living." So here I am, 64 years old. I stand on the deck of a boat named Second Chance, watching the marina wake up. And Jason work for me now. They clock in, they clock out. We are not a happy family. We are a functioning organization. I don't invite them to Sunday dinner. I don't hold them close. But I gave them a floor to stand on when they had nothing, just like Julian gave me. I realize that revenge isn't the victory people think it is. It burns fast and leaves you cold. The real victory is building a life so complete that the people who hurt you can no longer touch you. I didn't rebuild my life so my daughter would come back. I rebuilt it so that if she never did, I would still stand whole. And I do. This is where my story ends. Not with a hug, but with a handshake. Not with closure, but with clarity. That is the second chance I gave myself. And this time I intend to keep it. Freedom.